Well, let's hear now directly from two mothers on either side of the Israel-Palestine divide. In a moment, we'll be speaking to Jamie Nathan, who's in Jerusalem. Her son has been recently serving with the Israeli army in Gaza. But first, we're joined from Gaza by Adeem Abu Middain, a mother of two young children who's been blogging about living under constant Israeli airstrikes. Adeem, tell me what the last couple of weeks have been like.
Actually, words cannot express the anger and the fear we went through in the last couple of weeks. It was a constant nightmare to just to have the idea that I might lose everything in a blink of an eye. Every night I used to look at my kids while they are sleeping next to me and say, okay, maybe this is the last time I look at their faces. Maybe this is the last time I feel their warm bodies. I used to be very strict about their routine and like in daily life, but recently I break many of the rules I put because I say, okay, maybe this is the last chocolate piece she might have, or the last, or maybe, okay, let her sleep late, not at 8 like every day. Because, you know, I was so guilty to be strict with her and him in case it's my last moments with them.
Adeem, the Israelis are quite clear that they have the right to defend themselves, that they have to defend themselves, their people, against rocket attack from Hamas, against Hamas terrorists, as they say, coming through the tunnels.
I don't think what's happening in Gaza is a self-defense or is a war against Hamas. Wiping out entire families and level entire neighborhoods and destroying schools, factories, and farms is not about self-defense. I think it's a complete and pure state terrorism. This is so brutal and so barbaric.
Right to defend themselves? Do you accept that?
Sorry, can you repeat again?
Do you accept that they have the right to defend themselves?
No, I don't accept that. If they want to defend themselves, they should attack those who attack them, not the civilians. More than 90% of the people who were killed in Gaza in the last 24 days are civilians who were at shelters in UN schools or at their home, sitting safely, having meals, watching TV. It has nothing to do with Hamas. Even Christians in Gaza are being slaughtered, and the whole world is just watching us to die alone, you know?
We know that the United Nations have found on a number of occasions arms hidden in schools and hospitals. And the point the Israelis make is that it is Hamas putting Palestinian civilians at risk.
If Israel want to attack, you know, the fighters who attack Israel, they can, because they have the most advanced and high technology in the world. But this is a war against the essence of life itself in Gaza. Not only in Gaza, actually, in the whole of Palestine, even in the West Bank. You know, lots of things are happening in the West Bank as well. The settlers attack, building the settlements, cutting the roads.
So do you support Hamas?
I think the Israeli war...
Do you support
No,
Hamas?
I'm not a Hamas supporter, and I will never be. I will never support any religious group. But I am just a normal, ordinary Palestinian woman who sees that this war has nothing to do with Hamas or the resistance movements.
On that point, though, do you worry about your children growing up, growing through this situation and becoming more radical, becoming supporters of Hamas? Because that is one of the big fears.
Of course. Of course. I was away for the last 14 years, and I came back just to be shocked that most of my secular friends, you know, like who had once a hope in peaceful coexistence, they are becoming more extremist and more fanatics. And Israel, by doing more atrocities and more crimes in Palestine, is just creating a whole new generation full of anger, hatred, and nihilism, which will make only like these children who grew up. Yeah.
Adeem, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for joining us. We're now joined by Jamie Nathan, who is in Israel. Jamie, I don't know whether you managed to hear any of that, but how would you say your life compares with that of a Palestinian mother, Adeem? You must have heard her talking about the very real fear of not being able to wake up with her children the next day.
I think that part of the conversation was very similar to the way I feel. I think any mother fears for the lives of her children and their safety, whether those children, as are mine, are soldiers on the battlefield or also, as are my youngers, in bed, in the bedroom next to me, in the middle of an air raid siren at 2:30 in the morning, which is extremely disorienting, frightening. Sometimes my children are alone when the air raid siren goes off. We have had rockets fall in our neighborhood, I should say within a few kilometers of our neighborhood, and we know that this is a real threat. We are civilians. We are being targeted. And
Jamie, Nathan, I suppose the point
Yes.
is, yes, you live in fear, and nobody should have to do that. No children should have to do that. No individual. But in Gaza,
No one
mothers
should
and
have to do
fathers
that.
are living
I
in
think the word that
fear,
Adeem
but are
used-
living with grief too. 1,400 Palestinians have been killed.
Well, let's look at that number if we want to talk semantics, and then I think we need to analyze that number, and it has been analyzed by a number of media watch groups, and for the most part, I understand that over 80% of those who have been hurt are not civilians, but are actually Hamas activists.
Well, the UN
young
say a
men
fifth
who
of children
are part of Hamas.
The UN say a fifth of children,
Yes,
and the
I
majority
understand
are
also that
civilians.
And I understand that the majority of the people in Gaza are civilians, so we can play a numbers game. But I know that the word disproportionate has been bandied about in the media, and I don't think that the numbers say everything anyway. If one were to say, oh, let's just attack one person, let's kill the president, for instance, that would only be one casualty of war. But we can't see things that way. When your children are being targeted, I agree with Adeem. You cannot do anything but cry and be grief-stricken and worry and take matters into your hands. If you have an army, you use it to defend yourself.
Do you look across to Gaza? Do you see the pictures that we are seeing of children dying, children being buried, children with horrific injuries? Do you see those pictures and feel grief for those mothers?
As a matter of fact, we see quite a few of those pictures, if not on the television, then on the internet. And I do a bit of internet surfing, and that's where I get most of my news from. Many of those pictures are worth 1,000 words, and they are horrific. There is a question of how we can, in fact, counter that in the media, because one of those pictures that shows that grief is horrifying.
But excuse me, but you're talking about countering...
I don't know if it would help if I showed a...
You're talking about countering the image of children dying rather than the sheer numbers of children who are dying.
I am talking about defending my children. I do not wish to have any children hurt or killed, but I will first and foremost defend my children who were attacked by rockets which were sent from Gaza.
Although no civilian has been killed directly by rockets.
I understand that today there was a direct hit in Kiryat Gat. I understand that at least one person was critically wounded, and I don't think this is a game where we want to just wait for a death in order to justify what we're doing. I hope that nobody is killed, not any of the soldiers who are my children, a 19-year-old, a 21-year-old. They are my children whom I kiss every day when I can. And I went down to their army base to kiss them yesterday.
We're going to have to finish there. Thank you very much.